Good remembering.
Okay.
See if we get any new participants.
Conor, I just ordered that book.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a good book. I mean, it's a little like startup-y for like it's almost like if you haven't done it before, here's how it works, but it definitely has a lot of tips. Like you'd be like, oh, I don't do that. That could make things easier.
Yeah,
Breakout
it's
rooms are closing.
interesting.
Is that like a lock?
We'll see.
1 second here.
It wouldn't be 2020/2021 if we weren't having some problems, right?
Exactly, Shannon.
Oh,
Okay.
not because people want to come back. It's because they got sent back to the same room.
Yeah, we all got kicked.
Sorry, everybody. Okay, I've triple checked the allow participants to choose room option is now checked. I'm opening the rooms.
We have a cat now.
Nice.
My cat was also trying to join the party. If she comes back, I'll let
My
her
dog
show
was
her
barking
face.
at one point when I was talking. I don't know if that came through.
When we were doing our big room intros, we have 3 cats, and one of them was trying to eat my toe while I was talking. So that was fun.
They have such good timing.
Yep.
Hey, Shannon and Bria.
Hello.
Hello.
Guess we'll wait for some more people.
Oh, hi, Chong.
Hello, beautiful people. Sorry, I'm over energy here because my Cassie's my coworker. To just
Are you having fun? This is so cool.
Yes, I wish the time is more because we barely kick off the conversation and have more interesting talk. And so 30 minutes is up already. So I just jump around and see what's good.
No
Yeah,
pressure.
I really wished I could join some of the other sessions. Like I will be checking up on these videos when they go live.
Are
I
you
guess
all the same people that we have? Like
this is a new group.
New group?
Yeah. Well, the 3 of us, I don't know if it looks the same on everyone's interface, but the 3 up top are all the same because we're the moderator people. And then there's only 3 in the bottom. There used to be more. I guess we'll do introductions again. So I initially revealed that I'm a e-learning platform content strategist with a kind of focus on adjacent educational software products. I work for educational testing services, which is known as ETS, which my joke is you probably remember or don't remember, but we did a lot of terrible things in high school too. We wrote the SATs and the APs and all that stuff. And little known to me before I joined, they have a huge suite of educational software products. So there's a lot of UX writing that goes along with it. And there's also a lot of stuff like behind closed doors. What you may not know about is that the digital platforms that people take tests on are all go through heavy UX audits and designs and stuff like that. So as a content strategist, I come from a background of educational psychology. I used to work in textbooks. So I kind of have a focus on comprehension and how people learn through words. So I took that through from an editorial perspective to a kind of technical writing perspective to now this UX thing that has kind of become a big trend in the last 5 years. So that is my story. That's my skill set. Education specific, not very consumer facing, but I think all the rules apply. And as I've learned talking with Briana and Cassie, a lot of the same protocols apply. So it's interesting to hear their stories as well. I will pass it to same direction before Briana.
Hi. So I started out in my career in HIV system level service planning. So it was a public health position, and I was there for almost 13 years doing all different kinds of stuff. We had a small office of 6 folks, and I had a lot of different kinds of responsibilities. Some of it was working with legislation, some of it was writing grants, some of it was doing web stuff. And in our office, I was the only person who did anything with the website. So I designed, developed, deployed, maintained, did all of the web stuff myself, including all of the writing on the site, aside from things that were, reports that everyone in our office contributed to. And while I was there, I also did a lot of work with community. And I found that one of the things that I enjoyed most was translating complex government speak and complicated data concepts to community members. And I like doing that both in person and online. And eventually I found myself at the City of Philadelphia's Office of Innovation and Technology on the digital transformation team, where I get to do that all the time. We kind of function like an internal agency almost. The way that we've been bringing our departments over to what we call the new platform on phila.gov has been through deep engagement with one department at a time. So it might be translating the information from the department description site and then creating services that are in regular language that regular people use, as well as doing some UX writing and some more microcopy kind of stuff for some applications, where it might be any of a variety of audiences. Right now, I'm working on an application for vendor payments. I didn't mention this last time, but the vendor payments portal is the same portal that is used by both vendors for the city, so big companies like Staples, as well as foster parents. It's how foster parents sign up to receive their payments. And so we often wind up in funny situations like that, where we're writing for a couple of audiences with very different sets of vocabulary. It's not within our purview to perhaps switch the system up so we're not putting everyone through the same portal. So we got to work with what we have. And that's how I spend my time at work. Cassie?
Hi. Yeah, that really resonates. Working for Comcast, the audience is so big and broad and includes so many different user groups. It's just endlessly complicated. But to introduce myself, I studied journalism, eventually started my career in pharmaceutical advertising, where I became a copywriter. And then about 3.5 years ago, I transitioned to the tech and UX world, working for Comcast in experience design. So when I started, it was to support a very specific entertainment product, the voice user interface. If you're familiar with the Xfinity voice remote, like the interactions that happen between the customer and the TV when they're using that remote. But once I started on the XD team and there were hundreds of designers around me and no other writers, I started digging in to help support all the different design teams that I could find. And now, 3.5 years later, there's a team of 15 people and counting who are a centralized group of subject matter experts, but we're all professional writers. And we do everything we can to increase consistency and clarity across all of the products and platforms and everything we make, from the extremely complicated website to all the different combinations of products that people can own. Some people just have internet. Some people are internet and cable customers. Some people are cord cutters. So anyway, I don't want to babble too much. I would love to open it up to questions.
Can you tell? Oh, sorry. Did I unmute myself? Should I just raise my hand first? Sorry.
Go ahead, John.
Could you tell me? Could any one of you tell me more about, like, if someone who actually interested to go to start a content strategist or like UX writer, how could we easily get to that field, and yeah, about your past experience.
I'll start. I could talk about my path. So I started in textbooks as an editor, editorial assistant, then an assistant editor, and then then I took some courses at NYU and got certified as a copy editor, and moved into working at a large research organization in Manhattan, doing copy editorial on assessments, digital mostly. So for me, what I find the major parallel between editing and UX writing is the drive towards consistency in usage. So I had a real knack for making sure that the way you refer to one thing at the beginning of the story, you refer to it the same way throughout. As my company moved from being kind of a traditional research organization and started branding itself as an e-learning consultancy, I started working on a slew of different e-learning platforms where I had to build out content strategies, which at the time in 2015, we didn't call it that. It was kind of just copywriting, technical writing. And I started finding that I had a really good feel for auditing the platform's content and realizing this button's not working. And I was getting feedback on things when we'd send it to the client. They were having trouble navigating to the next question, knowing that, oh, did the student who just took this question where they had to drag the bear into the shape of a bear know that it's time to move next to the next screen? Where the directional copy off because a lot of students just stopped there. There was a 40-second delay according to our data. So I took it upon myself to kind of just learn about what I called back then student experience. And when I had to kind of present myself as a UX person, because I realized student experience and user experience were totally intertwined skill set wise, what I told the last group was I started auditing existing products. I would take screenshots of a product that I thought had clunky UX writing, and then I'd rewrite it and show a comparison and then create a case study. And that's sort of how I started showcasing what I thought was a skill set that had a market to it. And that's worked for me for finding freelance gigs and kind of moving into other spaces for short-term projects and stuff like that. Because my CV is very much connected to education, but it's a big market out there and a lot of freelance opportunities. So you really want to spread out. So I feel like if you don't have the opportunity in your organization, my pitch is to audit existing products and try to white label them best you can so you don't get in trouble. But that's my advice.
I love the idea of collecting examples of things you think work well and things you think don't work well, and just thinking of how it can be improved. Briana, were you going to chime in there? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'm somewhat of a career transitioner, so I can talk a little bit about what my path was. I mean, if you want to go all the way back, when I was a kid, I used to love going to diners because I like to proofread the paper placemats. But I never really had any intention of going into anything having to do with writing professionally. I was a political science major in college, and then I kind of landed in this organization where we did all of this work planning HIV services. And my last job title when I left there, I think, was health planner and website coordinator was my last job title. But I did have all of these examples of times where I had simplified complex concepts, and I had examples of a web app that I had built, as well as the bigger website around it. And so I was able to demonstrate with a side project. I had that example. I'm also on the organizing team for Barcamp Philly, and I'm one of the 2 people who really works on the content that we do for that. And so there are some nice varieties too of different types of writing that I've done for different contexts. I think one of the things that's really important in this work is being able to competently shift tone for whatever the case might be. When you have something that's like a very serious instructional path, Like you must submit this form and it has to be like this, or you're never going to get your tax refund or whatever it might be. As opposed to something else, it's, I don't know, a parent of a kid who's signing up for summer camp. It's a completely different way of talking to somebody and figuring out what you can use to show your breadth, I guess, as a writer can be really helpful. Like my portfolio pieces that I submitted for my job included an instruction manual for LinkedIn that I wrote for a freelance client who just really wanted to have an in-depth guide on LinkedIn. And then I had, I think, a blog post that I wrote about some federal health policy that came out, and the web app that I had worked on that was a service directory. And I think that a lot of people who do this kind of work too are not necessarily looking just for, here's a portfolio full of microcopy. They want to see what you can do in different situations.
I've learned when there's emergencies at companies, they want to pull in all the writers they can. Like right now, I've been pulled into the RFP situation. So it's definitely nice to show that you can write more than just a microcopy, if that's what might pay better and be what you're gunning for. You might have an edge on the other microcopy writers by showing a larger portfolio.
I also like the idea, sorry, going back to collecting examples. And this is something that came up in our last session too. So much of the job comes down to defending your choices and justifying why you've chosen the words that you've chosen. So it could be a good practice to not only collect examples of things you like or don't like, but to write why you think it works or doesn't work, just to have that justification. Sorry, Conor, were you going to say something else?
No, I thought Shannon went off mute, so I was seeing if she was had a question. No? Okay.
No. Well, I did have a story I wanted to share with you, Conor. My daughter she's 9, she's in grade, and she took the COGATs. So I'm not sure that that's a test that you'd be involved with at all. But
no, I don't even know what that is. Is that Pennsylvania?
It's a cognitive ability test.
Oh, okay.
So she took the test, she came home, she created an answer sheet for me. She had sample questions and she tried to show me what the test was like. I wanted to be like, I need to talk to someone who does these so I can just show you, here's your user experience from a 9-year-old's perspective. This is.
Well, I get a lot of, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay, good. I used to be able to hear my voice in my headphones. Now I can't. We do a lot of what we call Cog Labs, which is very much that. You have students interacting with the test, and you have moderators who speak to them, and the students encouraged to act aloud. Like, what do you think you do next? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And then you realize this screen has a problem. It might be a directional problem. It might be a UI problem, but you identify it, and then you try to figure out, this is not what I do. You have a UX researcher do this, but they will figure out basically what's problematic on the screen, and then we'll go right back and do it again with new copy and make sure that that problem is solved. Because when you're taking a test, especially tests that have longitudinal value, which means some tests have been conducted since the 80s and 90s, and they measure a certain outcome. And then when we transfer it to digital, if students it's much faster for them and they're taking the test a lot faster, that outcome, all the data from the past might be thrown out the window because it's no longer the same measurement. So we have the challenge of trying to keep the experience similar to the paper pencil in the digital realm. We don't want it to be too much more efficient, and we don't want it to be too much more confusing by because you might have previously just selected option A, B, or C, but now you might drag option A, B, or C into a container. So these things may complicate things. So the UX copy, it's very important to make sure all the directions are very clear and everyone knows what to do, because everyone knew what to do on paper pencil. Paper pencil was a brilliant UI, and we're complicating things with these new user interfaces.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of creating I had a question about creating a profile. In terms of how do you create or portfolio, starting to reach out to like even just your legal team to find out what you're allowed to use of any content that you might have created while you're working there. Because I haven't yet bridged the, possibility of creating my own portfolio, but been working in the same company for a long time. So my examples there would all be under, I need to get some approval that I can use the content. If it's not freely available, I'm assuming if you can't just find it on an internet search, I can't use it, is my kind of assumption, but I don't know. I'm just curious.
Well, I'm not speaking for PhillyCHI or anyone, but what I do is I white label. I take the product I worked on. I might have a friend who's a good graphic designer. I change the logo. I change the wording a little bit. I created like a case study, like a PowerPoint that I PDF, and I'd be like, the client asked me to, here's the challenge, here's the existing product, here's the value add I did. And I convey it that way. I mean, oftentimes you might have a public website you worked on, and you can just say, you can go in the Wayback Machine and go, this is what the website looked like 1 year ago today. And then you can you can put a link to the new one and just be like, here's my reference there. I did this. You don't believe me? Hit up my reference. So I think that's my general approach.
Thank you.
I had a question. Can you guys hear me okay? Great. I guess I'm not sure how to ask it, but I'd love to hear you all talk a little bit about how you see content strategy and being a content strategist, like fitting under this umbrella of UX, or does it? Or like, what's that relationship like? Does that make sense?
I mean, on my team, I'm coming from an application design team that's we're basically like an agency that lives within a larger organization, and we get farmed out. And I'd say I have to do more evangelizing than the rest of the team. I'd say the other team members that have to evangelize themselves a fair amount are the researchers, because they're not researchers, they're UX researchers, and you got to go onto a team and explain, oh, we're only here to research user experience. All that other stuff you want done, that's a call to PhDs. So and then for me, I am a copywriter, so I can do it. Sometimes they're happy to be like, oh, this guy who knows how to write's on the team, let's have him write a whole bunch of crap. But if it's specifically about UX, I think it definitely is it is a skill set that has a need, and you'll notice that when designers are writing. There's some designers who are good writers, and that's great. There's a lot of designers who aren't, and you're going to find all sorts of buttons that aren't consistent. You're going to see, I think a thing I notice a lot are the way people treat naked links, tertiary buttons and secondary buttons and first buttons, and they kind of mix them up later on in the thing. They're not remembering how the copy relates to the button, and that is where a UX content specialist is definitely useful. And then another way is the directional phrasing, from moving to one screen to the next. I think that has to be consistent, that has to be clear, and a lot of thought has to go into it. And I don't think the design team often has the time or bandwidth to put that added layer of cognitive load into their work.
Yeah, I would say for our team, there are about 15 of us when we're fully staffed. We have 5 people in the content strategy practice, and then everyone else is split up between development and the UX practice. But when it comes to anything having to do with words, the UX folks defer to us. And so we do, I think of more of our longer form writing, our department content, describing what a department does, describing what a service is and how it works, is more in the content design, content strategy realm for us, where it's something that's describing a process that's often completely offline, but not always. Sometimes it's a little bit of a mixed bag. And then we are also working on instructional text or microcopy or navigation. And so it's, for us, we do a little bit of everything, which for me, I like getting to do different kinds of things. So it works out really well for me, where, sometimes we'll be building a new application and sometimes it's just rewording some existing copy.
Yeah, I think the field of, content design, UX content strategy, it's very up and coming. It's evolving very fast. And the like the team that I'm on, I mentioned in my introduction, when I first joined, it was hundreds of designers to one writer. And now we've kind of reorganized to bring in more writers to support, to partner more closely and be embedded in the design team. So I think you've hit on like a very topical issue for this discipline for sure.
Cool, thank you. That's also interesting. And none of the three of you call yourselves UX writers. And I was curious about that kind of overlap as well, because that's something that gets thrown around. I don't see it, it doesn't seem that used from what I've seen. Maybe it's more applicable to like product stuff.
Yeah, I actually call myself the product content strategy lead. I think I started as a UX writer, but as the team has grown and I've kind of leveled up to just be like, all right, I mean, and this is different for every team and every company, I think, like everybody deals with it differently, but where our organization is at maturity wise with content strategy, it's kind of like you start as a UX writer, and then as you kind of branch out and start making more connections between different things and driving the strategy. I think somebody else brought up how it's parallel to a research team, how like we're always just asking to be included earlier in the process. Like, don't just put words on at the end, don't test it once it's already done. Start including researchers and content practitioners earlier and earlier so that we can be involved in the whole process.
Yeah, and the dichotomy, I kind of, and I could have made this up, so I don't know if this is industry best practice, but and this is not how it works at my company. I was hired as a UX content strategist, and I'm hired as a senior UX content strategist, and I had a vision of how things would work. And I thought I'd be going to applications and creating an initial content strategy, designing a voice chart, designing a style guide, piecing out, and then a UX writer would populate. And then I'd go into the next product and do that. So that was sort of what I thought a content strategist would do. And it sort of is. Like I work in lo-fi wireframes. I consider user flows. Sometimes I'm working on a blank slate that has no design and I'm not populating a container. I'm creating the content strategy in Sketch or whatever else. And I'm just drawing lo-fi diagrams of how each page is going to work. And then it moves over to the designer, and the designer's got a better eye. The continue button should actually be up here, dude. It doesn't make sense all the way down here. So, but the words I choose are what they use as Bible when they move forward through the design. We actually don't have any UX writers, so that was a surprise to me when I joined. So it's, I think a good way to manage these workloads going forward would be that you have someone lays out the strategies and they could run across the whole company. And then you have UX writers who populate the strategies, and then they get audited back by the strategist, or maybe you have a proofreader. I know I kind of come from an editorial background where I see everything as a waterfall. It's not very agile. And I know in these agile environments, I sometimes feel it's awkward to be the content strategy guy when everyone's iterating, because sometimes the words are a little static and they shouldn't come until later, or they need to be there a little before. And you're kind of sitting there during these iterative processes and you don't have input for a little while. When there's a waterfall situation, you have the concept written, you have the application of the copy, you have the copy edit, you have the proofread, and it just kind of flows out the door, and you're downstream and out. So yeah, I don't think there's a current best practices for what's what right now, and it's a new field. And I'm sure some MBA one day will define it in a big book.
I think we have time for one more question, like a quick one, maybe, if anyone has one.
I got here a little late. So hi, my name is Fayola Ama. I got here a little late, so someone might have asked this question. I'm looking for ways to connect more with other content strategists and designers. Does PhillyCHI, does it have, are there any groups that you guys can share, maybe through the chat or another way? And I know there's things on LinkedIn and other places, but I'm wondering, like in our locality, if there's ways that we can just start connecting with people.
I know of a Philly content strategy group that's through Meetup that I'm going to look it up and I can drop it in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, there's some cool groups on LinkedIn as well. And I see people reaching out to try to, what the gentleman was just talking about, like everything really being new. And I'm seeing books now starting to come out now that are really helpful. I saw excellent, if I get some of your names, I saw an excellent article just on LinkedIn earlier today that was breaking down ways that you would merge style online as opposed to having something separate. And it was very cool. So some of your names I wrote down, and maybe if I pass it on to you, you can maybe pass it on to some people in the group. But I thought it was a good way to get started in terms of starting up structure.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, for sure. Yeah, I'm actually part of the Philly community.
There's also,
go ahead.
I was just going to say,
Rambling.
this is not Philly specific, but there is a content and UX Slack team that you can join as well. It's content plus UX is the Slack.
Oh, it's on, they have a Slack channel?
Yeah.
It's like a Slack instance. I think I'm on there too.
Mm-hmm.
Medium is also good. I think there's a lot of people, I mean, the levels of expertise vary, but there's a lot of people writing, and I think more and more all the time about this field.
Oh yes, it's booming.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting. It's evolving so fast.
It is exciting. And I like all the flexibility as well. Oh, we gotta go.
Thanks for joining us.
It's so weird. It's like just enough notice that you just want to hang out.
Just stare at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the holding the door too soon and like the running.
That's an experience